What the frick? Alright, here I am again. Another video. Nothing spooky or deep on this one. Well, kind of deep in a way. But as it would turn out, not that deep. I'm making this video. It's not much of a story here. But a few months ago, I mentioned something in one of these videos that I had a quicksand experience. I was talking about, just stuff to talk about, that I've experienced. And yes, I have been in quicksand when I was in the Army. So I'll just share what it's like to be in quicksand. And how I wound up in there and how I got out, obviously, because I'm here. Get this candle lit. Have this cup of tea. You know what? That candle ain't gonna light. So be it. No, not so be it. This is quite a ritual, doing this. The candles. Alright, so when I was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, I was in Charlie Company for this. It was Charlie Company 2nd 504th of the 1st Brigade, 82nd Airborne. Bunch of young guys. We're all about median age of about 22. I think I was 23 at this time. So, my unit was in the field at Fort Bragg, doing infantry training. Meaning we were out there for quite a while. Get bored. And I encountered some quicksand. And first I want to say quicksand, if you watch any of the old movies, 60s, 70s, even some of the 80s, like Indiana Jones, they kind of sensationalize quicksand, Like the old Tarzan movies come to mind, or Indiana Jones comes to mind. Hollywood had an infatuation with quicksand in their scripts. And you don't really see that anymore, but I don't really watch a lot of movies, and I don't watch pretty much any TV shows, so maybe they still do. But you used to see quicksand where somebody goes in quicksand, it's like a death sentence on the movies. You're stuck in there and you're just going to slowly sink until your face goes right down, drops beneath the water. You always see them real slow. They wind up, they go up to here. The next thing you know, they're like this, and then bloop, they're gone, and just their hats floating on top of what looks like ground with leaves. My understanding is quicksand occurs usually when there's tide, when there's water coming in underground. It could be from an underground spring. It could be from the tide. I actually read up on this because I really had no idea and not much interest, honestly, what quicksand is about till I made this video. So you got solid ground, usually sand, not always, but sandy ground. And water comes in up underneath the sand and it permeates the sand enough that makes the sand into liquid, where it floats the sand particles somewhat. Well, I mean, you could look into it if you're curious. I'm sure there's a deeper understanding of this than what I'm imparting here, but quicksand occurs when you have water movement under the dirt, usually from tides, but sometimes an underground spring or some underground water source that rises up to the point that it causes quicksand. Causes the soil, usually sand, to become impermeated with water to where you sink in it. Well, so I'm out in the woods of Fort Bragg, North Carolina woods, that is. A lot of sand there. And come here, buddy, puppy. Alright, sorry. He's got hot spots, and I'm trying to keep him from licking those. Problem he has. Sorry for that. So my unit's out in the field, in the woods, at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And it was summertime, and we're doing infantry training, meaning we got Army helmets on, and carrying our rifles and stuff around, and camouflage and all that good stuff. Well, we were halted up in an area, and word got around that there was quicksand. They passed the word back that be careful, there's quicksand up ahead a little ways. And they'd marked it off with red tape they tied on trees around it. And I'm like, quicksand, oh yeah? I'm thinking like old movies, you know, with quicksand. This should be interesting. So we got up to the area. We're moving through the woods, tactical. I don't know, were we tactical? I don't think we were tactical. But we were still spread out in like a single column of guys moving through the woods. So they, gave us a hold up for a while, and they just happened to hold us up when we're right next to this quicksand pit. Which they had, there were actually small trees around this. And it really looked just like sand. It was a sandy trail kind of that we were walking on, and the quicksand looked no different because the top of it was just as dry as the rest of the trail from the sun hitting it, so you'd never know that it was watery because it didn't look any different than the rest of the ground around it. Just kind of sandy with a few leaves and stuff on the surface. You'd never ever know that it was quicksand. But they tied off little red engineered tape, like plastic tape markers around on little twigs and branches around it. Somebody did, so that we'd know it was quicksand. So we're held up there, and I tell the guys I'm with, I was a sergeant then, I think, or a corporal, a sergeant. Because if I was a corporal, I would have had the M60, but I know I had a rifle. Because I remember I said, hey guys, I'm going to go in this. They're like, what? And the guys, I said, yeah, I've never seen quicksand before. I'm going to check it out. So like 3 or 4 guys, they're with me, like they're watching me. I took my helmet off, took my boots off, my web gear off, and put my rifle up against a tree. Now I got to tell you, there was a large tree limb branch conveniently hanging out over the quicksand pit. I wasn't really that worried that I was going to get killed in this. So I'm going to see what quicksand's all about. So I deliberately walked into this, and I'll just say it wasn't anything that dramatic like the movies. The eerie thing about it is you'd never know it was quicksand there because, like I said, the ground looked no different than anything else. It looked like sand and some leaves and twigs, and it was just as dry as the rest of the ground that was solid. So I went into this and I sank up to about my waist initially and started sinking. Sure enough, I was sinking, and not real fast, slowly, just like the movies. I think I let it get up to about my chest, right? Before I got out. But I will tell you one thing. My feet were kind of stuck in it a bit. You could get stuck in quicksand. I think it would be a bigger danger, possibly, than drowning in it, though that has happened. But my feet did get stuck in there pretty good, stuck. I think that, from what I've read, if there's any danger of quicksand, it'd be like stepping into a tidal area of it and getting stuck in it, and then the tide comes in, or what have you. I think getting stuck into quicksand is the biggest threat. Drowning is too. But no, I slowly sunk into this stuff, very slowly, moving around. It was pretty thick, pretty soupy. I got up to about here, and I just grabbed a limb, actually, started to pull myself out. Now I'm remembering back to it, and actually I couldn't pull myself out because I was pretty well stuck in there. My feet were. But the guys had a branch, and they handed me a branch, and they were able to pull me out. And I kind of waited out at that point, and they pulled me out. If I was there alone, I might have been in trouble, honestly. From my understanding, see, I was trying to get into that quicksand. I stood there and kind of worked myself into it a bit. And I did get kind of stuck. And like I said, I recall, the guys did help me out with a branch. They helped pull me out. And once my feet were out, it's just like water. So I just waited out, and that's it. That's the story. my quicksand experience. But yeah, I wanted to check out some quicksand. I mean, I was jumping out of airplanes for a living back then. So I think walking into quicksand deliberately didn't seem that daunting for me. That said, again, I think I was lucky that I had my friends around me. I probably wouldn't have done it if I was alone. I think if you're alone, and this is what I read, only because I read up on this a little before I made the video. If by some chance you fall in quicksand, don't do like I did and try to stand up in it, where my feet did get kind of stuck, you know, and I stood there checking it out, you know, moving around a bit, kind of checking it out until I got to about this high in it, and my feet were fairly stuck. If you fall into quicksand alone, you're supposed to wade out of it. Lay back on your back and take the weight off your legs and use the buoyancy of your lungs and just wade out of it and swim out of it. You know, roll over and just swim out of it. And not like I was just standing straight up, you know, and working my feet into it, because it did catch my feet pretty good, you know, like concrete down there. But that's it. That's my quicksand story. Good night. You don't need to be afraid of quicksand anymore.